How do and welcome back. My name is Andrew Hancock and I'm a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with the VMware products since their inception in 1998, so that's 23 years I've been working with the VMware product line. Some of you may say if you cut Andy in half it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool. I've also written over 100 articles for Experts Exchange and won many other awards and accolades. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program for the last 11 years and more recently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 2. Welcome back to part 5 of my Hancock's VMware half-hour series. Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at how to enable SSH for remote access on a VMware vSphere Hypervisor 7.0. As you may remember, in part 1 we actually installed ESXi 7.0 U2 on the Dell PowerEdge R730 and I've been using iDRAC, the lights out management or out of band management, to actually access the server. And in part 4 I actually basically used iDRAC basically to access the virtual console via iDRAC to basically log into the console and get a bash shell. Sorry, a shell. Bash shell is specific to Unix or Linux. Very handy feature to have on a server that basically gives you backdoor access because it's usually configured and has its own dedicated network card, network interface, and its own dedicated power supply. So should you have an issue with networking, you're able basically to get to your ESXi host through out-of-band management. However, if you don't have out-of-band management and you need to basically perform some troubleshooting, then you may want to basically look at enabling SSH server effectively, or listener on the ESXi host that allows you basically to use a SSH client on Windows, Linux or Mac. Popular one for Windows is Putty, and I will put the download links for Putty in the steps. And this video basically follows the article that I've already created at Experts Exchange, which if you actually basically like a written piece to actually basically follow step by step with screenshots, then it's all there for you. And we're going to follow that today. We're going to follow the first part of that today. And then I'm going to actually show you how a slightly different method that you can do this as well. So the first thing we need to do is to connect to the VMware vSphere Hypervisor, which we actually basically covered in part 2. But I'm going to show you again here because I wanted to show you a couple of things that didn't occur in part 1. And this was basically a dialogue which basically pops up that turns around and says, help us improve the VMware host client. And basically you tick yes, I want to join it, or no. Just something I wanted to show you because that's normally what happens with the default. So I'm going to say, yeah, I want to join the customer program. Obviously that depends on your privacy and your security and governance within your organization. If you want information going anonymously to VMware. So anyway, so I'll click on it, and you can read the product participation details there. So I'm going to click OK. We've already actually basically seen this in part 1 about the potential vulnerability of that particular CVE. So I'm just going to basically big X that. We've already spoken about evaluation mode. I'm going to big X that. And obviously we're running the Dell EMC custom version of the VMware ESXi image. So I'm going to big X that as well. Okay, so back to the article, back to the video. And if we want to enable SSH for remote troubleshooting, basically, very simply, we click Actions, we click Services, and we click Enable Secure Shell, SSH. And once you've done that, you'll get a warning. I would recommend that you only enable SSH for troubleshooting, as it actually basically states there. you should disable SSH unless it's necessary for administration purposes. So if you need to do some troubleshooting, you need to update your server, then it's okay to enable, but don't leave it enabled. Click Actions, Services, and Enable Console Shell. So you get 2 warnings that you can dismiss. So ESXi shell is now enabled. So I'm going to minimize that, and I'm just actually basically going to, I've already created a shortcut here in Putty, so I'm going to double click the shortcut, and Putty is going to give me a security alert basically telling me that it's not actually basically communicated with this server before. Do I want to cache the server's host key in the registry? Yes please. So I click yes. Okay, so now we have a standard SSH prompt, and we use the super user account root followed by the password, and that's it. We've connected remotely now via SSH. If I just expand it out, and we'll do a very similar task to what we did in part 4, where I basically looked at the VMFS volumes. That's the full path, and again we can actually basically see the ISOs that we have there that we uploaded in part 4. And I can do exactly the same thing. I can do md5 sum, and I can run md5 sum and basically get a MD5 signature, which we did in part 4, but we didn't actually basically enable SSH to do that. We actually did it at the console. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back, and I'm actually basically going to disable these again, because what I want to show you is, okay, so we're now disabled. ESX is disabled. And I just wanted to show you this because this actually comes up a lot of the time on Experts Exchange. People actually basically turn around and say, well, I've tried to log into Putty to my server, but it refuses. And basically, here we go, network error, connection refused, because SSH has been turned off on the server and we can't actually connect it. But that gives me an opportunity to actually basically show you another way. Now, this is not covered in the article, but you can actually enable SSH at the console. So again, if you have physical access to the server via a keyboard, KVM, etc., you're in the data center, or you have the ability basically via out-of-band management, iDRAC, ILO, then again we can actually basically log in to the DCUI screen, and we can actually basically select troubleshooting options, and we can actually basically enable the ESXi shell, and this is what you actually saw me do in part 4. So I've enabled the ESXi shell and I've enabled SSH, and if we actually basically go back to our screen here and do a refresh, then there we go, they're enabled again. And just to prove that, I'm now just going to double click my Putty icon again, and there we have an SSH connection to our server. And again, there we go, there are ISOs, MD5 sum. Okay, so in this very short video, I've showed you how to successfully enable and disable SSH so that you can actually basically connect to it from Putty, and I've shown you how to enable it from the host client or from the DCUI screen. So once again, thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to you coming back and looking at part 6, where we continue our journey into configuring VMware vSphere Hypervisor 7.0 U2. So all the best and keep safe. Bye bye.